Hey everybody, welcome back to the NerdNest podcast. I'm Bill, it's me, it's Russ, it's Carrie. Guys, I hope that you had an awesome week. And speaking of things that had an awesome week, it looks like Emulation is having a pretty fantastic week. I just saw this either last night or this morning. I don't remember when, actually, now that I talk about it off the top of my head. But Marvel vs. Capcom 2, which is a really good game. I love that game.
Oh, yeah.
The PS3 version, I never actually played the PS3 version, but it now has the ability for you to, with your emulator, the RPCS3 emulator, which I'm sure Russ will be able to tell us more about in a second. That emulator can now go online and you can play against other people in emulation, and that's just really cool. So Russ, can you tell us about, have you attempted this yet? What do you think?
I haven't. I've never tried any online stuff through emulation at all, now I think about it, other than there's like a mod of what is that honest online game people used to play on Dreamcast, Fantasy Star or something like that.
Fantasy Star Online.
There's like a mod. Yeah, there's a
Yes,
mod
sir.
where you can play that online, but for RPS3 or RPCS3, I haven't done that. But this is a great emulator. It's the only game in town, really, when it comes to PS3 emulation. They've been doing it so long. This is one of those emulators where it's kind of amazing because there's no drama. You don't ever see any drama about this one. There's always drama in the emulation scene. If you ever follow anything to do with like RetroArch or that stuff, it's just nuts. You know, people mad at each other and all that stuff. RPCS3 just kind of keeps trucking along. You never really see much about them, but you just try a new game and all of a sudden this one works now, and it's kind of amazing. And so I've been watching emulation for this one for a while, and it's pretty awesome. And so it's cool. I've never thought about Marvel vs. Capcom being anything but a Dreamcast or a Naomi game, and so it's kind of awesome that we have it for PS3 freely available like this. That's cool.
And you could play it online. I remember, I think it was back in the days, like, I didn't have like a front end or anything. I had like all of my emulators that I used were all standalone stuff basically. And I remember trying to play, like, might have been in Nesticle or SNESX whatever. I can't remember what the name of it was.
9X.
Yeah. I remember trying to like play an online game with friends back in the day, and it never worked. It's amazing how far emulation has come, and the ability for people to now like have this online account, go on and play this essentially dead game online with other people. That's fantastic that it works. Like Carrie and I, we played an online game this weekend, and we ran into all kinds of issues just trying to talk to each other, like just getting our systems to talk to each other. And here we are with this old dead game, and it's back. Carrie, are you a fan of Marvel vs. Capcom?
I actually am. I actually have a quick fun fact. The moment that I fell in love with the PS Vita D-pad, I bought Ultimate Marvel vs. Capcom 3 for PS Vita. And I have the cart still over there in my little box. And when I played it, and when I first started using the PS Vita D-pad, that's when it was just like, oh, this D-pad is amazing. That's when I became like a full-on like zealot for the PS Vita D-pad, and why I asked GPD in like 2019 to like be inspired by it. And they just copied it as best they could, and why it's been a thing that they've had in every one of their
That's amazing.
machines for a while. It's all from Ultimate Marvel Capcom vs. 3 on the PS Vita. That is like the fun fact for today.
Yeah, I really like this online idea too. You know, like this is different than net play. You know, so net play is when, for example, you can play an old NES game and it will mimic having two players on the same screen. Like, you know, you play Contra, and we each have your own controller. With net play, you can use two different devices, and they both are mirroring the same screen. And one's player one's player two. So that's kind of a neat workaround too, and that really does. It's really awesome when you have like two Mew Mini Pluses and they both can do that. You know. But this is totally different. Like, these are servers that were not intended for play anywhere other than on the PS3 in that slice of time, and then it was gone. And now all of a sudden people are bringing that back, and that's kind of amazing because you're bringing back some memories that you probably thought were going to be gone forever, which is awesome. So I love it.
there's two cool things about this, like from the online play. So NetPlay, there is actually a thing I want to talk about NetPlay as a side thing, but specifically with this, with how the RPCN or RPN network for playing RPCS3 stuff, is that there is an avenue here. Now, you think about like how GameSpy had their own network so that you could use override the LAN-to-LAN part for like old Xboxes to expose them to a greater internet and basically fudge LAN-to-LAN over wide area networks, right? Which is not ideal because the game is anticipating less than 1 millisecond of latency, right? Like that's what it expects, and you're just saying, no, go to Hawaii for this other connection, but it isn't aware of it. Whereas for this is a part where there is netcode built into it, right? It's trying to solve things in a smart manner. So there's lots there. There is an avenue here where technically these third-party servers could do a better job than PlayStation ever did. So you have you can have a situation where they're just working on the back end and like, oh, we could fix this, where Sony was just like, whatever, just let it run. Like, because those guys are and for what it's worth, I get it, right? These guys are legacy type of people. Any type of code change in this thing could be massively could affect things in a massive way where everyone is like, oh, it's a a fire drill. Whereas these guys could just be like, whatever, it's our thing, let's just kick it off, and you can be running versions. People are running their own versions in the background and kind of managing themselves, where the consumer side wouldn't have that. So there's that avenue as well where you can kind of hope that there is a better, like this, like RPCS 3 is going to be better than the PlayStation 3 could ever be,
right,
type of thing. So it's really wild.
It's awesome too because like internet just gets faster and faster, and so like there's another opportunity for better connections than there were back in the day too, which is awesome.
Yeah.
There's go ahead. No,
okay. Well, I was going to say this wasn't really in response to either of what you guys were saying, but like looking at the RPS whatever 3. Looking at this and now it's on, like this online thing, I almost wonder if Sony or Capcom steps in here and says, yeah, you know what, you guys are stepping on sales of our new Marvel vs. Capcom game, so y'all need to shut this down. And like that's the kind of thing I'm not a lawyer. I don't know if what they're doing is legal. Like, did they have to break some kind of DRM in order to get these systems to talk to each other, or these games to talk to each other? I really don't know. We've seen in the past where people have gotten like an old Xbox and put that online. Like I think a friend of ours, damn it, Jeff. He has this video where he takes an old Xbox and puts that online on private servers, right, which is really cool. I just wonder if this is anything that we ever have to worry about getting taken away, because this is the only way that we get this game preservation happening is with emulation to the rescue again and again.
So the one good thing about this is that whenever these efforts are done, they're clean room reverse engineering type of things, which is why emulation is allowed in the first place. The parts that get squirrely with lawyers and stuff is copyright. So if you were to like make a Legend of Zelda game, Nintendo will come in hard and fast. Like as soon as like I made this game, Nintendo lawyers will spring into action. Whereas this is just a reverse engineering effort, and if it was found to be using code that PlayStation had, they would have a stance, a legal stance. But if this is a full-on, they're figuring it out in the background how the communication happens, they don't have a legal leg to stand on, so there's nothing to worry about in that respect.
That's good to know. Well, speaking of emulation, we got a couple more emulation stories that I figured we could like bunch them all together at the beginning of the show. Emulation Station DE desktop edition is now available for Android. I have not yet installed it yet, although Russ has a really good video about that. I'm going to probably end up putting it on my Retroid Pocket Flip, which is my Android system of choice that I have. Although I got to be honest, most of the time when I'm emulating Miu Mini Plus, like that's my favorite just because of the form factor. But this is really nice as well. You've used Emulation Station Desktop on Android. How hard is it to go through the whole a thing, and is this something that you think maybe people should just wait for?
Well, it's the biggest thing that I'm learning is that a lot of people are familiar with Emulation Station because of EmuDeck, because they're kind of combined together when you set up a Steam Deck. So you have Steam Deck, and then one of the apps within EmuDeck, once you have it all set up, is Emulation Station. That's the front end that basically gives you the ability to navigate through your games, pick them, it all looks pretty. So people were saying, people were thinking that when you get Emulation Station for Android, it was going to do all the things EmuDeck does, which is downloading and installing all of your emulators and then configuring them for you and all that stuff. And so all you have to do is just drag and drop your games. And it's not like that at all. You have to still do all that configuration yourself on the Android side. So you got to find your PSP emulator, download it, then point it to the right game file, all that kind of stuff. All that still has to happen. Emulation Station just wraps it all together at the end so that you have like this nice navigation experience that feels very console-like. So the hard work has to already be done. You've got to get your emulators, you got to set them up. You know, I got all of these guides on my website for various devices to set that up. And that
website is?
But the retrogamecore.com,
okay.
CORPS.
All right, keep going.
Anyway, yeah. So the idea then is that this is like the last thing you do once you've set up your device. And if you've already done that with a different front end, say you used one, a really popular one is called Daigisho. A lot of people will use Launchbox as another option that they can use on Android. If you've done all that already, you've probably already pointed everything to the right place. Emulation Station is very particular that it has to be put in one specific folder where it's like, okay, here is the folder for all your ROMs, and please tell us where it is, and then you have subfolders, and they have to have a specific name, specific case, and you put your games in that. So if you're first getting it set up and you've never set up a front end, it's pretty easy because it's going to do all that for you in terms of like your navigation of putting where your game files are going to be. But if you've already done it and set it up with Launchbox or Daigisho, then you got to move everything. And so that's what I do in my videos. I like show people, hey, you got to move it. And I was so surprised how many people were like, I'm not going to do this thing because I don't want to spend the 5 minutes moving those folders over. That's too much work.
Just moving the folders was too much?
Yeah, and we're not talking about copying, which takes a while, you copy your file. It's moving on an Android device. So it's literally just saying copy all and then put them in over there, and so it takes 5 minutes altogether. I mean, I do it in real time in the video, but all the same, yeah, people don't like that idea of having to remove their folders. And there are a couple quirks with Emulation Station that are limiting for some people. So, for example, you can only point to one ROMs folder. So if you have some ROMs on your internal storage and some on your SD card, it's not going to play well with that. You got to put them all on one or the other. And that's just the way the Emulation Station's been built from the ground up from back in the day. And so there's little quirks to it. But, man, once you got it set up, it's transformed like the way I use Android-based handhelds. Like they've always felt like they're just phones with controllers slapped onto them, basically. You've always swiping and doing all these things to kind of just, it reminds you that you're on an Android device. But I found that with Emulation Station, you can just kind of remove all that. It really does feel like you're using like a Linux-based console, something like the Miu Mini, where it's just a enclosed kind of ecosystem, which is awesome.
Yeah, I have. So I followed your guide in order to put Daigisho on my Retroid Pocket Flip, and it's like it looks cool, but it like there's a little less intuitiveness to it, especially because I've been using Emulation Station on my Raspberry Pi, which powers my arcade, and also I've been using it in anything that uses EmuDeck, which, by the way, EmuDeck is also available on Android. We'll talk about that in just a second. Everything having that same interface makes it so that I know exactly what to do every single time, because whenever I fire this up and I open up Daigisho, I'm like, I have to remind myself, how do I get from one system to the next? Because it's not the D-pad, it's the trigger instead. And that's like my brain hits the wrong button a million times. And so once this is fully baked and on the Google Play Store, and once, like, I haven't tried it yet, but EmuDeck on Android, if it brings with it Emulation Station and puts all of that together and ties it together in a nice, neat bow, just like it does on the Steam Deck or on a Windows PC, then Yeah, I'm absolutely going to do that because I really like this device, even though a lot of people don't like the hinge. I'm just careful with it, I guess. I think that's really cool.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting because it's a paid app. So, like, for example, EmuDeck works so well on the Steam Deck because Emulation Station DE is free on that version. But the developer made this one paid because, honestly, he like posted about it. But basically, he was not getting any donations. He had all these donation buttons on there. Like, nobody was like helping support his work, and he'd put thousands of hours into it at this point. And so he's like, I'm just going to make this one version paid, and that will like kind of help me like recoup some of those like time and effort and all that kind of stuff. And so it's not going to be seamless for EmuDeck where they'd be like, okay, and now here's Emulation Station pre-configured, because they're going to have some sort of mechanism say, okay, please pay your $5 for Emulation Station, then we can continue with the rest of the install. Right now it's set up to work with Daijisho for EmuDeck, so it would just do all that stuff for you in pre-configured Daijisho, because that one is a free app. And so hopefully they'll have some sort of symbiotic relationship at some point. It's kind of why I've been hesitant to make an EmuDeck video for Android, because it's so early and some of these things are still being worked out. And so I've just kind of been waiting until it's to the point where like, okay, now it's a great experience for everybody. Let's make a video, Sorry, Kerry, you were going to say something.
Because I've been I'm very old school when it comes to these things, because I've always been a hardcore emulator enthusiast, and all of them were, every front end has always appeared to me as like an adjacent thing to basically just collecting games, getting ROMs, get a hoarder's mentality. I've had so many people talk to me, be like, yo, look at my hyperspin setup. And, it's like all this crazy nonsense going along. It's like big roulette wheel of stuff. That. And they spend like 3 weeks of time not playing any video games. They're just making this super fancy front end like it's like a kiosk mode, right? Like, look what, and that's what they want to show off more than, anything else. So it's like, if I find that to be like an adjacent thing. EmuDeck was like the first thing. When I first heard of it, I was like, oh, we're going to have another hyperspin thing. But for what it's worth, EmuDeck has gone in a better direction than I was hoping for, and Steam Input also does a lot of nice stuff. Kingsfield on PlayStation 2. There is a Steam Input thing that you can map, so that, because when PlayStation 1 and PlayStation 2 came out, the idea of analog sticks to move with the left analog stick and look around with the camera with the right analog stick was a foreign idea. Right. So you would look around with the triggers. So you're like, it's such a silly way to like look around. So in Steam Input, the guy just like remaps L1, R1, R2, L2 to the right analog stick. So you're moving around and it feels normal. So you strafe correctly with the left analog stick. And that is that's like a way better way to play Kingsfield, and I prefer that for every Kingsfield game. But I've been someone that I just use the emulator raw. Just use the emulator raw. Don't go. Just play. How about you just pick one game, you put that there, you run the game, and you don't need all this stuff. Is how I've always looked at it. But I do get it. I get it, especially from EmuDeck on Steam Deck, because Steam Deck is not intuitive for a lot of people on the Linux side of things. That is like, there's certain things that for some people that becomes a real challenge to navigate, and I can get that. So that is something that I get that. But on the Windows side, it's always been trivial. But yeah, that's basically where I'm standing from, is that the front end part of it, probably as a negative for me, because I haven't been covering it, because a lot of people do love it. A lot of people love it, and I'm that one guy, the smug guy in the background going, just use it raw. So that's me. That's me.
Yeah.
I do like EmuDeck though. I do like EmuDeck.
I've been spending.
I forgot to say.
Oh, good.
One thing. One of the nice things about Android, if you use an Android phone, is you should download Google Opinion Rewards. It is a privacy type of thing, so if you don't care about your privacy, don't download it. But if you are like, well, whatever, they already have all this information, when it detects that you like walked by like Best Buy or whatever, it said, hey, did you go to Best Buy? Did you buy anything? And then you just answer like 3 quick questions, and then they're like, here's 50 cents. Use it on the Google Play Store. And I've like accumulated like hundreds of dollars in Google Play money just from doing this. So anytime that like Yuzu Early Access was like $5 or whatever, I was like, have some Google Opinion money. This didn't cost me anything. It's like, you drastic emulator, have some Google Opinion money. This didn't cost me anything. So I've been buying lots of Android stuff, and I haven't paid a penny. So I have like hundreds of dollars in my Google Play Store for just answering quick surveys.
That's awesome.
I don't know if anyone hasn't done that. Just a little.
What
FYI.
were you going to say, Russ?
So I was going to say too, one of the best things about Emulation Station, I spent the past 2 days, I set up my Odin 2 and I made my video about it and whatnot. But then I also was reviewing an Anbernic device, the RG556, also has Android on it. And so I set all that up too. And like in spending those like 2 days really getting it set up, I found the number one feature about Emulation Station that I didn't realize that I loved so much is the fact that you can go in and delete the game from Emulation Station, and it deletes it from your device. And so like I'll do that sometimes. I'll throw a bunch of games on there, or maybe I'm like testing one game and I leave it on the SD card, and then all of a sudden I've got like 2 versions of Wizards and Warriors, which is strange, but that was one of the issues I had. And so I was like, I do not need 2 versions of the same game. Usually you'd have to go into the Files app, find it, and then delete it or whatever. And you can't go into like an emulator, like go into Dolphin and delete a GameCube game. You can't do that. Emulation Station will delete it and the XML file, all the media right then and there, which is pretty amazing. And I haven't seen a front end that does that in Android on the fly like that. That's pretty awesome.
I will say that I know that you said it's 5 minutes moving files, and I was like, "Oh, those people couldn't do that." I didn't do it either. Like I didn't go through the process of installing the Amazon store on my thing on the app. Yeah, like
it is a pain.
Once it gets easier, I'm all for it. I will say this, like the point that it's $5 and like nobody was donating to the guy, I have to admit I never sent the guy any money, and I use this stuff every single day. I love that he decided to charge for this because clearly he's put a lot of work into it, and it's used by so many people. I love that he decided to try and get paid for his work, because I've been just riding for free this whole time, and I feel a little bad about that. So once it comes to the Google Play Store, I'll probably buy it.
Yeah, he had a Patreon, and I was like one of 10 people that were paying into it, and just like I'll do that. Like I see something I like and there's no way to buy it. I'm like, okay, well, I'll support them this way or whatever. But as soon as he made the Android app, he just closed his Patreon. He was like, I'm closing this down. Don't need it. Like we'll just put we'll have one way to funnel in money for me, and it's going to be through the Android version. And so it's been, I don't know how well it's been doing for him financially or any of that kind of stuff, but I do know that like the day I made my video, the following day it was the #1 app on the Amazon App Store. There's a whole weird thing where it's not on the Play Store yet, and it's mostly Google permissions issues, and so he's still working through all that. He's just trying to talk to a human who will allow him to like have his app on there, but all these bots keep like preventing it or whatever. But anyway, he put it on the Amazon App Store as an alternative, and that like happened in 5 minutes. And so that's like my video says, okay, you got to use the Amazon App Store to get this app, but it'll work on any Android 11 or above device. You just have to go through Amazon to get it. But anyway, yeah, so it's just kind of amazing that it went to become the #1 app on the App Store in the US that following day, like beating out Minecraft. And that's like everyone with a Fire tablet in the United States who's putting Minecraft on their device. Emulation Station's got more, like at least for that 24-hour period. And so as I think this headline is going to say on this video is, Emulation Station or Emulation wins again. So.
And I love that we can see Russ's hands here on this lilypudding.com article. Yeah, I found it this morning when I was putting the show notes together. All right, one more emulation thing that we got to talk about, and I can't remember what that is, but it was the okay. So the PlayStation Portal, which a lot of people were very unhappy when the PlayStation Portal came out, and they said, "Why can't we play games natively on this thing?" And a lot of people were like, "Well, the community is going to make this happen." And I said, it doesn't even have an SD card port. It's going to be really hard for somebody to make this happen. And you know what? Doesn't matter what I think, because somebody was actually able to pull this off. Russ, you have a PlayStation Portal. I won't get into why I don't have one.
Love it.
are you going to do what you got to do in order to run this on there? Because can you go back from it?
Yeah, so I know I read the tweet, and it's from The Flow. The Flow is the guy who cracked the PS Vita. Like, this guy knows what he's doing, right? He's always been on top of these things for the PlayStation stuff. So it's kind of amazing that this guy in particular is the one that's working on it, right? But he got PSP emulation working natively on the device. He doesn't say anything about how it performs, and he does mention in a follow-on tweet that there's only 8 gigabytes of online storage, so you can play your one PSP game, you know. I don't see myself ever trying to do native emulation on the device, especially if we're limited to those 8 gigabytes, unless it's something like Super Nintendo. I can throw those on there, you know, that kind of thing. What I want is the ability to put XBX Play on there, you know, to be able to play Xbox games on the PlayStation Portal. That'd be awesome. Moonlight streaming, you know, things like that. So just smaller apps that are just dedicated for game streaming, NVIDIA GeForce Now, that kind of stuff would be amazing. I don't think I want to actually emulate on the PS Portal natively.
You know, Carrie, you've been saying you hate this thing. This is a terrible idea. You were the one who was constantly poking at me. It's going to be terrible. And then you were like, it's terrible. I was right. Which is hilarious because Russ loves this thing. But
44%.
Does this change your mind at all? I don't think so.
No. No, it doesn't. I mean, it's really just a price thing for me, right? Like, at $200, this has no... It's just the thing of, like, why would you get it? I don't really understand. But maybe for the controls, I can get it. Like, there's some things there, but I just, like... At $200, it's such a... You have to be such a PlayStation fan, and I know there's lots of them out there, and it's been sold out all the time because who knows how many they actually have been manufacturing, because who knows how, what kind of thought they had of, like, in terms of unit sales that they're going to have. But they've been selling out of this unit constantly. Like Wario 64 is constantly like, hey, it's available, and people are like, oh, rush to go get that thing. I've never been a big fan of it. It's useful. I just think that the pricing for it is not aligned with a lot of people's expectations. That's my feeling. But it's been selling out, so what the hell? Well, what do I know? Yeah, I mean, for it to be hacked and to play native PSP games, it is funny to only have 8 gigs of storage on board. It almost seems like Sony was like, let them hack it. Like, go nuts. You know what I mean? Like, what are you going to do there, huh? It's like, I'm going to put my Super Nintendo collection on there. I don't want to play Super Nintendo games. How about that?
Right.
Yeah, it's, okay. It's a thing. This hacking situation doesn't really change my mind all that much on it. For what it's worth, my nephew has a PS Portal. So he plays, he uses it periodically whenever he needs to. So it's a thing that it exists and people buy it despite my, like, just screaming in the background, just buy a Steam Deck.
Russ, you have a million different devices that you could use to do this, but you reach for the PS Portal to play your PS5 games via streaming all the time. Why is it that you reach for that instead of all the other devices?
Because it's literally playing the PS5 like on a screen. You know what I mean? Like it's the Steam Deck is close. You know, it's got that nice ergonomic grip and stuff. It's not a PlayStation controller. Like, it's got a PlayStation controller on it. It's got all the rumble haptic stuff. You know, when I shoot my bow and arrow in Horizon Zero Dawn or whatever, I have the resistance and the trigger, like all those things. It's just a PS5 that I can lay in bed and play. And so I don't think of it as a handheld at all, even though I've got all those other handhelds that can do the same streaming. This is just an accessory to me, and I love it. Like, it just as much as I used to love my Xbox Elite controller when I was playing Destiny 2 or Destiny 1 back in the day, because I had those back paddles and I could jump by not having to take my finger off the thumb, or off the right thumbstick. And so those kind of things are awesome, you know. And yeah, I like it as an accessory. And so for me, it's just like an extension of my PlayStation 5. And so that's why I like it. And of course I could do that on anything, but I don't know, it just fits.
That's awesome. We've got a bunch more topics to talk about. We're going to be talking about PSVR2. We got Proton. We've got maybe PS5 Pros coming out later this year. But before we talk about all those topics and a whole bunch more, we want to talk about the games that we've been playing. Russ, it says here in our show notes, you finished Horizon Forbidden West.
I did. The Burning Shores DLC.
On the portal or on your big screen?
Half and half. That's a game that I don't mind playing on the portal because I think it still looks really good. But man, the game is gorgeous on a 4K TV, and so I do prefer to play it on TV. And I did finish it on TV. I wanted to have like that, really nice cinematic experience, and so it was okay. The game is awkward. It's a clunky kind of awkward game. Like you could just tell. No like shade on Guerrilla Games at all, but you can just tell it's got a bit of an ESL kind of feel to it. Like it was just like the native English speaking, like it's just a little bit off because Guerrilla Games is from, I don't know, somewhere like I think Denmark or something like that.
Oh, okay.
And so it's just always just they're trying to do the Hollywood production thing, but it's not like Naughty Dog where it just feels correct and like all the pacing and everything's perfect. This one's always got that weird like European, like kind of just slightly foreign feel to it. And it's been that way with Killzone games. All that stuff has always been just a little bit off for me. Same thing here. It's just a slightly awkward game, but the gameplay mechanics are fine. The story is interesting enough, It's not a game that I think a lot of people, like I can't just heartily recommend it for anybody, but if you want like an open world game and, the ability to either just go straight into the storyline, which is all I really did, or you can kind of meander if you'd like. It all works. It's a solid 7.8 out of 10 is what I would give it. It's not quite an 8 out of 10, and not a 7.5 out of 10, but just somewhere in between there, basically. It's fine. I finished it. So.
I feel like they got screwed both times because when the first one came out, they released right on the heels of Breath of the Wild, another hugely popular open world game that, in my opinion, did things better. That's not to say it's bad. Horizon Zero Dawn was really, really good, but it wasn't Breath of the Wild for me. And then when the sequel comes out, it comes out right at the same time as another hugely popular, highly anticipated open world game, Elden Ring. And it gets overshadowed every single time. And like Elden Ring, we just found out the date of the DLC for that. But it just feels like this game never was able to grab me like those other games were. And I kept feeling like as I was playing it, I would run into like you could only climb in certain areas. So you go up to the thing and it's like, oh, here's the things that the yellow paint or whatever, or I think it was white in Horizon Zero Dawn. Like here's the things that you can climb, but I had just finished playing Zelda and I could climb wherever the hell I wanted, no matter what I was doing, as long as I had the stamina for it. And it felt restrictive in a way that wasn't, that took me out of the game. Now, if I had played it without ever playing those other games first, maybe my tune would change. I will say that I loved the VR game where I'm like building my arrows and stuff with my hands. It was really cool. And I wish that I liked this game as much as everybody else does, because everybody always raves about how great it is.
Yeah, it was. There was definitely some other awkward points, like jumping in that game. Like if you need to jump from one rock to another, it never feels like you're going to actually do it. Like there's just something off about it, And so there's just these weird, awkward moments to it. It doesn't have a very solid feeling like some other games do. And so, yeah, it's got its issues, but all the time, like all the same, it was still. If I got 20 minutes to kill, I could just jump into it after dinner for a little bit. And it did take me a year and a half to beat this dang game. But, yeah, it was great.
Combat in that game, though, is really good. Like, the combat is very satisfying.
Yeah, that's fun.
Carrie, what have you been playing, man?
So I've been pecking away at Brotato in the background periodically. I've gone through a bunch of that. I am going to fully finish that. Like when I say finish that game, is that I'm going to get every achievement possible on that game. So I've been playing that and just pecking away at it. And then you and I also got a nice round in of Helldivers 2, which I agree with you, Bill. But it's a nice game to play in between games because it's like. there is no overarching thing. There is no thing. You just choose a mission. You go into the mission, and the missions are kind of whatever. But you go through the paces, and then you can kind of just bounce away from it. So there's no general idea of like you needing to like peck away at this thing. This thing is to fill fun time in between other fun times.
Yeah, like we were playing yesterday. I played it for hours yesterday. I was playing with some other friends early in the morning, and then I logged off to go eat lunch, and when I came back, they had logged off, and I was like, oh man, I really want to play Helldivers 2. So I sent a message in, like I was playing with randoms, and which it has a ping system, so you don't have to talk to anybody, which is wonderful. But then I just messaged into our Discord, Helldivers 2, anyone? And then Fox got on, and we were, oh wait, I'm supposed to call you something different now. What am I supposed to call you? You have a new name.
What was it? The tech reviewer?
Tech reviewer Carrie.
Carrie.
Yeah. Maybe we can fill people in at the end of the show on what that's all about. But anyway, Carrie got on, and he and we were playing, and it was absolutely a blast. And there's this one moment, which I saw that you had tweeted out, where you had sniped we had gotten pretty far away from each other. Like I went off on doing a thing, and Carrie was doing something else, and he's sniping these dudes that happen to be near me, and I see like a bug go flying past me, like really fast. And I said, did you do that? And he goes, yeah, I just got an achievement for shooting something at over a certain distance or whatever. The way that things happen in that game, where just like you see bugs go flying, or if you're fighting against the robots, like the crazy explosions constantly happening, it's so intense. And there was even one point where I had died, and Carrie's trying to do what's it called? The
stratagems.
Yeah, a stratagem where he calls, he revives me essentially by calling in reinforcements. Yeah, he's trying to do reinforcements, and he's got the little, essentially Pokeball that you throw in order to say, this is where I want the reinforcements to land. He's got the Pokeball, and he throws it and dies. And then I land, and I am just surrounded by bugs, and I'm running. And I just run because we were already at like the maximum number of reinforcements you could have. And so I'm just running for like 2 minutes because we have to wait for the cooldown to finish, and the bugs are just chasing me. For 2 minutes I'm running, and then finally I was able to call it in, and then he was able to, he came, and we ended up winning. But it was really intense and really fun, and that game is punctuated with moment after moment after moment that is that.
Yeah, the automatons I'm a huge fan of. They whoever the character designs for that deserves a gold star or multiple gold stars, because that is like, hey, Terminator, those guys aren't really all that frightening looking. Why don't if they're designed to like kill humans, why don't we have things that are like, why don't we design these things to like just maim them? So there's robots with like dual chainsaws coming after you, and it's like they just look absolutely menacing. The clip that I shared I love because it ends when like I'm looking around and I totally miss because I'm looking on the right. I play on a 48-inch monitor, so I'm literally moving my head around when I'm playing because I'm 2 feet away from it. So I move and I'm looking over here, and then I see something out of my periphery, and I'm like, what is that? And I see just a horde. This is after the 100-meter thing, and I'm like, OS. This is bad. I'm like, and Bill's like 100 meters away, right? And I'm like, oh no, I only have a sniper rifle and my little machine gun. I'm not going to do anything for these guys. Then they have the AT-ATs that are there, and it really is punctuated with these moments of just intensity, and how they do everything. It is really amazing, and I think that they struck gold. They have lightning in a bottle here, where it's those same moments from any type of game that you have where you're just like, for what it's worth, Halo has done this for me in multiplayer, but not in the same thing, is that how the map is designed. There's such a focus on it that where you put the weapons and stuff, that there's these contention points that just naturally occur, and they have that in Helldivers 2 because you're going to mission objectives in these spots, and because they have those, there's these contention points that just bring out this 30 seconds of fun that happens, and it's so well tuned. It is such a well tuned machine that Helldivers 2 deserves all the praise it gets, because it just manages to extract fun in a continual dosage. That it's such an amazing game, and I just wish that we could get more people playing. Because if we had 4 people, I think we'd just have a absolute blast.
Yeah, absolutely. I will say that the people, Arrowhead Games, had said that they're doubling their capacity, but it's still not enough because the game is so popular right now, which is just, it's crazy to me. Although I didn't have any trouble connecting to the servers yesterday.
Yeah.
The only issue that Carrie and I had was when I'd be like, hey, invite me, and he'd be like, you're offline, and I'm like, no, you're offline, and we were just having that back and forth where we couldn't get it to work, and we closed the game down and turned it back on a bunch of times, and then eventually we got connected, and then everything was cozy, everything was great, it was easy, but just getting that initial connection was kind of a pain. I've been playing also Helldivers, but I also have been playing the Final Fantasy VII Rebirth demo, as well as the DLC for Final Fantasy VII Remake, because I was watching, I don't know what show it was, but Maximilian Dude was on it, and he was talking about how there's something to get going on with the story of the DLC and how they're going to integrate that into Rebirth, which comes out on the 29th, which is in 4 days as we're recording this. And so I was like, okay, I guess I better play that. I was going to skip it, but I'm working on that right now. But the demo for Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, holy cow, I cannot believe how much better this plays than Final Fantasy VII Remake. It is the combat is really, really cool. It feels the same, but you have these other new abilities where you can basically pair up 2 characters, and you could do this in the DLC of Remake. So when Yuffie and her, I don't remember their names, the guy that's working with Yuffie, when they both have an ATB bar, you could say, oh, well, let's work together and do a maneuver where they work as a team in tandem. Well, now, every single character in Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, they all have pair-ups with all of the other characters. And when you have enough ATB on multiple characters, you can say, okay, I'm going to have Aerith do some magic, and as she does that magic, Red 13 is going to howl in through the magic and send the magic out further. And it's just all of these really cool combat moments that I really am enjoying. And the first game was very hallway, you're just going down a freaking hallway. I love the game, especially the second half of the game. The first half is a little weak because the combat doesn't give you enough options. As you get more powerful, you get more options. It makes it more fun. But the first game is very hallway, hallway, hallway. This game, holy cow, it feels like just in the demo I could go wherever I wanted. And not only that, but I'm also in control of my party because, I've got my 3 that I'm teamed up with, but the other members of the party are there too. They're just off to the side, shooting, not really doing anything. But if I see, I don't know, a monster that has weak against thunder or something, and I know that Barrett has thunder materia on him, before we go into combat, I can switch the members of my party to be okay, it's going to be Cloud and Barrett and Aerith, and we're going to go in and do the thing. And then the next fight I can say, oh, this time it's going to be Cloud and Red 13 and Yuffie, and I go in and do that thing. That is really cool. And everything that I've heard about the reviews of this game, currently a 92 on Metacritic, this is probably going to be my game of the year. Because just the demo, I'm completely sucked in, and I even started playing the original on my Miu Mini Plus again. So I'm hyped for it. Russ, did you get any further in the game? Because I know that you were running into the issues that I had.
Yeah, I forgot. I didn't put that in the show notes, but yeah, I played that a good 2 nights over this past week. Like, I just sat down. I was like, I told Bill I was going to play it. I'm going to play it, you know. And so I like kind of held myself accountable. And so I got through the train graveyard. I'm now in episode 12 or chapter 12 of 18. So I'm pretty far along in it. I'm enjoying it. You know, there's just some cheesiness to it, you know, which is just kind of awesome and also like just kind of cringy at the same time, you know. But like, it's one of those where there are times when I'm playing the game and I'm like, I hope my wife doesn't walk in right now, because like the way that they like angle Tifa or whatever, I'm just like, God. This was awesome in the 90s, you know, back when they were just like these little polygons, but now it's like, it's a little too much, you know. And so there have been those moments, but yeah, I'm enjoying it. I thought that the game came out this past week and I was like, there's no way I'm going to get it done in time. Now I might be able to. However, I did read an article, and I think it's in our show notes too, that like it might be 4 years before we have the one after this. Yeah. And so I that kind of took all the rush out. I'm like, okay, well, maybe I'll just wait till it's, you know, half price, you know, kind of thing.
Yeah. I mean, it was, the first one came out in 2020, was first unveiled in 2015, you know, and then it came out in 2020, and now here we are 4 years later. So it makes sense that the next one's going to take another 4 years. As far as what you were saying with like how they point the camera towards Tifa and stuff, if you've seen any of the trailers for Rebirth, it's so much worse because yeah, like, because I don't know if you remember, in the original one you end up going to like a beach town or whatever, and everybody gets bathing suits and stuff, and so like you've got like Tifa and Aerith, they're wearing skimpy outfits. Well, I mean, everybody's wearing skimpy outfits except for Barrett, who's wearing a sailor's uniform, which is hilarious.
It's fan service has gone too far sometimes. You just like, what? When fan service goes too far, it will actively make me not want to play a game. And I feel like Fire Emblem has been one series of games where fan service is just hockey sticked up. Is like, even like the covers of these games is like, Fire Emblem isn't supposed to be like this. Is a heavy strategy game, and this just looks like waifus. This is like this is a totally different. So yeah, there's like certain things that like too much fan service. I'm in agreement with you guys, and we're probably way in the minority here with that, because there's so many people on Twitter that are reposting that beach scene. And I'm seeing them in like maid cafe outfits, and they're like, "Oh, I'm gonna buy this game. I'm gonna live this." And I'm like, "Whew." Well, I hope you have a good time, dude. But back to what you were saying, Bill, about the joining the powers. I think this is one thing that I think is a favor to that game, and kind of talking about Helldivers too, is that there are these, when you go into those fighting segments and you have that teamwork that's going on, there are these gifable 30-second moments that are just, they sell the game itself. You don't even need to say anything. Just post this 30-second, 15-second clip that is going to happen in a game. You didn't arrange it. You didn't like, you know, do all this stuff to like make this happen. Like how Monster Hunter type of stuff works, where the person is so good that they actually made this thing happen, right? Like, you know, he's like timing this perfect swing and stuff. Like, you don't have to do that as much in Rebirth. And there's one scene where Barrett is teaming up with someone else. I forget what it was, but it was just such an epic cinematic anime scene. Like, anime for me is the type of stuff that it turns out that I like is shonen and shonen only. So shonen is like fighting anime, so Dragon Ball, Demon Hunter or whatever, but basically just fighting stuff, right? So like you can see the progress of whoever you're going along with, and they start off, you're watching almost like an RPG, right? You're watching an anime RPG is what it comes down to. And that's the type of stuff that I wind up liking. Or like One Punch Man, which is a satire of all that type of stuff, which is just funny. And I'll enjoy watching that. But that's what winds up happening with Rebirth. It kind of has these epic cinematic anime quality, like top tier, awesome view angles. Like, it's like the camera like shifts, and it's just amazing looking. You're like, wow, that looks awesome. So like when you were talking about Red 13 howling through the magic, and it's like you get to see all that when you see it happening without Bill, like, you know, spending 2 minutes to say what's happening. It's far more impactful, and I think that's going to help sell the game a bunch. Is once the game is like out and people are playing, you're going to start seeing all these like 30-second clips of awesome combat scenes that are happening, and that alone is just going to start propelling it even more. The one thing that I heard from someone that's reviewing the game, he's like, I'm 120 hours in the game and I still think I got like 80 more hours to go, and I was like, oh my gosh. like that's something that I don't, but this is like platinum territory, I guess. So people that are looking to platinum the game, yeah, is where that
I
is
was watching a podcast this weekend and somebody said that they finished it in 80 hours, which again, most of the time 80 hours I'm like, ooh, I don't know about that.
Yeah.
I think I spent 40 hours playing Remake total, and I finished it. So 80 hours seems like a bit much, but this is open world, so that changes things a little bit. Like, you have a little more freedom to go around and do things. So I think you could probably streamline your experience with this a lot more.
There is scary. 80 hours is scary to me. Like, Horizon Forbidden West and the DLC, you know, I just finished it 38 hours, and it took me a year and a half.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So maybe I need those 4 years. I don't know. That's a lot of time. 80 hours.
I think the problem is for us, we are the minority, really. Like, we're like, oh, fan service, 120 hours, ugh. Like, and everyone else is like, yeah, fan servers, yeah, 300 hours, and I'm just like, just totally different mind spaces for where this is at. For what it's worth, I would say that Rebirth is far more geared towards people that were looking forward to that. So it's banging on all cylinders for the people that are huge fans of that. Not to say that people that aren't huge fans of that can't find fun in it. It's just that there are certain parts of it, like we're looking at, like, ooh, 80 hours, like, ugh, like that's going to take me. Should I even invest time into that? That's like something that seems impenetrable. Yeah. So yeah.
I think you're right about that.
I will say that. I will say that when you're looking at that 80 hours, what a lot of people who've been reviewing the game have been saying is that it has a ridiculous amount of mini games, which is very reminiscent of the original Final Fantasy VII. Lots and lots of little mini games that you can do, and a lot of the, like, it feels like that 80 hours is going to be broken up by segments of differentiated gameplay, where I'm not really doing that same thing for 80 hours. Like, you know, I'm in this area and this is the kind of stuff that I'm doing, but then when I get to the next area, like Gold Saucer, now I'm doing completely different things, and that breaking apart of that 80 hours, that seems a little bit more palatable to me. That being said, I also understand that there's a lot of people that like to assign like dollar value to the number of hours that they play a game. I've never really thought that way, but I can understand why people would look at a game and say, well, I'm spending $70 on this. I better get a lot of hours of gameplay out of it because, you know, I could have bought something else. And so I do understand that. I just know that for me, sometimes the big number of hours that you can spend playing a game can make me wary to start it because I know that I'll never get to the end. That being said, I got to the end of Final Fantasy Remake, and I didn't think I would ever get there because, yeah, it's only 40 hours, but still, it took me a while. You know, the game's been out for 4 years. It took me 4 years to beat it. Russ, what were you going to say?
I was just going to kind of going back to when Carrie was talking about those 30-second snippets, you know, that'll really sell the game once that's actually out. I think there's even another layer on top of that, because not only is it going to be like cool gameplay and stuff, it's going to be a layer that is cool gameplay with your beloved characters from your childhood. And that is like, you know, that's like a double whammy right there. And so I think it is one of those things that, yeah, the right people I think all of us Final Fantasy fans at some point are just going to break and buy the game. You know, there's going to be enough like cool nostalgic moments where we're like, all right, I do want to live that moment. You know, whether or not the 80 hours of gameplay like to get to those moments are going to be worth it is another story. You know, there's the idea, like I like the idea of having variety in a game. You know, like I love the Metal Gear Solid games for that because they always throw you like new things, you know, that kind of stuff, which is another game I was playing over this week. But there's time if those extra gameplay moments are not good, then it's a chore. and then it pulls you right out of that experience. And so you'd really have to find that balance. The only thing I can think of in like Final Fantasy VII Remake so far where it's been a distraction that I've enjoyed it has been playing darts. Like, that was fun. Like, I was like, all right, let me see if I can get like good darts or whatever inside of like Tifa's bar or whatever. That's the only time where I was like, this is a fun distraction. All the other times where it's like potion making or whatever, I'm like, I don't want to do any of this stuff. Give me the tunnel, the hallway gameplay over that stuff. At least if it's not good enough. You know what I mean? So it's a hard distraction.
Yeah, I will say that speaking of the mini games, everybody who's reviewed the game is going bananas over the card game that's in this game. It's called Queen's Blood, and the amount of the amount of just chatter out there about how good Queen's Blood is makes me really wish that Square Enix would release games like that outside of the game that they are played in, so you could play against the other people. So if Russ and Carrie wanted to sit down and play a game of Queen's Blood against each other, they could do that, and they could do it on their phone. And I'm reminded of when Todd Howard went out on stage at E3, and he said, Fallout 4 is coming out later this year, but if you want to play Fallout right now, we've got a phone game that you can play. Fallout, was it Fallout Shelter?
Yeah.
Fallout. You can play Fallout Shelter on your device of choice, and people were really enjoying that. This is the kind of thing that I think Square should be releasing Queen's Blood on your phone, on Steam, on the consoles and stuff, in order to help build hype for Final Fantasy. Not that they really need to build hype for Final Fantasy Rebirth, but in order to help build that, and they could capitalize on the popularity of Rebirth and probably capture a whole bunch of dollars through, have gold around the edge of your card or whatever, like little microtransactions.
I feel like they did this with Gwent, right? Like the Witcher 3 card game, where there was an app for that one too, and I thought that was brilliant. I never played either of them, but I thought it was just super cool that you could take Witcher 3 with you on the go. Like, it was kind of cool.
Yeah. It would be really cool if you could have the cards that you have in Final Fantasy VII Rebirth.
Yeah. What has he got here?
For the audio listeners, Carrie just stood up and grabbed a copy of the Witcher 3 Gwent starter pack or whatever that he was holding in his hand there for a second. That's really cool. I've never played those games, so I don't know anything about Gwent, but I know everybody loves Gwent.
So this actually they gave away for free at PAX East one year. So they just had boxes and boxes of these that they were just like handing out for free. So I picked up a set, but yeah, you can.
Is that a physical game?
Yeah, it's in the game as well, but they printed out all the cards so that you can play it physically.
That's cool.
That's really cool.
Yeah, so this is the physical version of Gwent, full thing. So you can just go ahead and play like actually with people that know how to play Gwent.
So that's another Square Enix thing that they could do, is make a Queen's Blood physical set as well, and all the card playing guys be into it. That'd be cool too.
I'm a big fan of the type of synergy that can happen with those types of things, right? Like if you can have Queen's Blood on the phone thing and whatever you're doing linked up with your PlayStation or whatever your Square Enix account, and then that can kind of translate to the game itself. That type of stuff I'm such a huge fan of. For me, I think that those types of things, especially for all of us, this is more for us people than the people that are like, 140 hours. And the point I'm trying to make here is that, like auto battlers or things that auto clickers, cookie clickers type of thing, right? Like you kind of do this micromanagement and then you say, okay, that's as good as I can make it right now. And you put the game away in the background, but it's still like doing things in the background, right? It's still earning you stuff in the background. And I feel like there is that segment of the game, especially if you were to play like Skyrim or anything else where you needed to need a certain amount of material to build something, right? I would rather do the micromanagement on my phone and be like, okay, this guy has to go farm that stuff and that guy has to go farm that stuff. I don't want to farm that crap myself in a game. The last thing I want to do is like pink like, you know what I mean? Like, I don't want to be spending my time just holding X and just, you know, doing this one action over. I would rather that be a synergy mobile game where you can micromanage that, and then all of the material that you earn doing that goes in your real game, and then you can actually start crafting stuff. That is such a better idea to me in so many ways, and I think Queen's Blood goes in that. Not saying that that would be material, but gold, right? Like there's gil or whatever that you would get in game, or lose it, right? Like, you know, like I think that
Right.
that's I think that's cool. I think that's a cool thing that has a nice synergy to it, and I don't know. It's definitely something that I'm in agreement with you guys, but I could also understand that, you know, it's time and investment and money and whatnot and production time.
I think you're more likely to do the whole pink thing, like when you're waiting in line, you know, or something, and you're like, okay, I can just knock out a few of these. It reminds me of Mass Effect 2. I don't know if you guys played that game, but man, I remember devoting an entire evening to mining materials from those planets, and I was just like, I can't believe, like, this is my evening, is just doing this so that I can get whatever achievement or progress in whatever way I needed. And so that's always the thing that, like, because of that one evening and that poor experience, I have no patience to do it in any other game now, basically.
100%. I feel like everyone, it's either this is the make or break moment, and some people just don't get it. And there's been like World of Warcraft for me was like my grinding moment. Like I was level 54 Warlock, and I had managed to find this like perfect set where everything that I would go on when I killed these mobs, as soon as I finished my set, it would respawn, and it was like perfect. And I was like, man, I got the perfect time for this. And this like wave of like loser like came over. It's like, you're a loser, and I'm like, what the hell am I doing? Like, I'm not even like, I'm just like min-maxing like how to do this particular thing. I'm not. What am I even doing? This is not advancing skill in the game or anything. It's just making numbers go up, and slowly, like, what the hell am I doing? And I just got away from that game. So anytime I have this sense of grinding in a game where it's just numbers going up, I just immediately like, ugh, like, just, I'm disgusted by it, and I don't even want to entertain it anymore. But yeah, there's by it. Yeah, I am. It's any type of grinding is just like, I can see this loser wave coming, and I'm like, no, thank you. I'm not going to have any loser wave, thank you. This is like, but yeah,
it's hilarious.
Oh my goodness! All right. Well, speaking of losers, PlayStation decided that they didn't have enough games for the PSVR2, which I agree. I remember opening up my PSVR2 and playing Horizon, whatever it's called, Call of the Mountain or whatever, and having an absolute blast with it. But most of the time, my PSVR2 sits in a box. Like, I really don't play it very often. I don't know if it's because there's not enough games for it, or if it's because the games that are available for it are not interesting to me. I think the number of games that I've played on that thing has not come anywhere close enough to justify the amount that I spent on it, which really makes me regret that I bought it. But a little bit of that regret might actually be going away soon, because it looks like PSVR 2 is, and this is officially from their blog, is going to be compatible with PC soon. Now, we're going to talk about what this actually means in a second, but Carrie, you bought one on a discount, right? Mm-hmm. Are you excited for this because of this change, or what?
I'm
you also
super
have a
excited.
Quest 3.
I have a Quest 3. I also have a Valve Index. So I have a Quest 2. I have the DK2 Oculus. I have so many VR headsets that it's absurd. I'm not the hugest, like, I'm not a VR enthusiast. Well, I guess I am, but like not to the same degree. Like, sadly, it's Bradley, right? Like, that dude lives and breathes VR stuff, and I get all of my up-to-date news from Sadly It's Bradley on Twitter. So that dude I always like follow just to get what's going on. But knowing that there was work going on in the background from like people trying to hack getting PSVR 2 to work on PC, and now Sony is just like, no, we're just going to support PC with the PSVR 2. I think that's really awesome, especially because we talked about this prior, is that PSVR 2 does have eye tracking, and I think that there's a a lens here, and people are saying, well, eye tracking is not going to be supported by a bunch of different games because developers need to target it, what, this, that, and the other. However, there is a component here that can work in terms of rendering. And when you are using rendering and using foveated rendering, that is also a technique that you can do. So that means that it's going to be lowering the barrier to the amount of performance that are needed to actually render higher resolution stuff. Because of the foveated rendering information that the PSVR2 is giving a system, you can only render stuff what you're looking at, and you're going to have a much cleaner thing. And I think that this is also part of OpenXR that it could adopt and handle if it's not already there. Again, I'm not really in tune with all that stuff because I kind of just use it and play with it instead of like geeking out on the technical side. But I would wager to guess that OpenXR already has this functionality, which is this underlying layer that kind of makes it cohesive against all these different VR headsets that Steam VR also uses. So there's like things that are there that necessarily like, well, you don't have touch controllers. Well, that's okay because, you have hand tracking and OpenXR. So there's like things that like will handle outside use cases and try to create a seamless existence between the both of them. So I am a huge proponent of this because I feel like it's going to be another VR headset that can come into the market, and because I had bought mine for like $350 with the controllers, that's a good price for a thing. Now it is wired only, and Quest 3 can be wireless. When I still think wireless is a much better. I think wireless is a better experience overall. It's such a more freeing experience, and I'm such a big fan of it. And that alone, even if it is not as good as whatever, I will still like. Even Quest 2 is wireless, and I almost will tell people to get that if it's like cheap enough and they want to just explore it. Just because wireless on PC is wireless VR is such a big experience. But if for people that are like, what, I just want to test this out. Maybe with the eye tracking, it can do some cool stuff. I'm a big fan of it. I think it's awesome.
Yeah, I put out a video yesterday, and I said that it's got the foveated rendering. That's the one thing that it has as a leg up over the Quest 3. A lot of people in the comments pointed out that it also has OLED as screens, so the blacks are it's black. Like the pixels are turned off, and there's no extra backlighting. And as somebody who's only used the PSVR2, that's something I don't really think about because I haven't had that experience of not being on an OLED screen. Russ, what were you going to say?
I think this is a win-win for like everybody. You know what I mean? Like this will sell more PSVR2 units because people will. I mean, now hear me out here, but I'm just speculating. But this essentially will mean if it is PC compatible, that you wouldn't have to own a PS5 to play like these PC VR games. So it's just an additional option of a PC or of PC VR headset, right? And so that makes it kind of compelling in its own way, in that it doesn't have to be tied to that PS5 ecosystem. So I think it makes it compelling in that sense. If I didn't already have the Meta Quest 3, which I'm really enjoying, this would make it a viable option for me when it wasn't before. Because I was like, I don't want to buy a thing just for Horizon Call of the Mountain or whatever, But what I would really like, the next step, if this was opened up and all that stuff, okay, put Horizon Call of the Mountain on the Steam store. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, so I can play it on my Meta Quest 3. Because that would be amazing too, and they're going to make that money as well from the sale of the game. It's not going to be a full headset like sale, but at the same time, it's them kind of joining this overall VR spectrum. And so I like that idea because before that, it was just kind of like, yes, they have these PlayStation VR games that you can play, and that's it, But now, I don't know, kind of opens up the whole world for everyone, which is cool.
Yeah, and in exchange, Valve could put out Half-Life Alyx on the PS5. So then you could play the best VR games wherever. And that's like when you're looking at the VR segment of the audience is so small. And then to further fragment that by having all of these tiny little silos is just a bad idea. So I love that they're going to do this. But here's my question, because I was like playing a game on my PC, and my PC has a 2060, an RTX 2060 card, and I was asking you guys, I was like, what should I upgrade to? Like, what graphics card should I get to replace in this thing? And the thing that occurred to me is, with this, does my graphics card have to have USB-C in order to be compatible with this headset, because this headset is USB-C, and like I don't think my computer has Thunderbolt. Like it's a computer that I built myself, and I don't think it has Thunderbolt. I don't even think it has USB-C ports on it. Like, would I have to have a graphics card? Is that the only way to have that go out? Terry?
No. So the answer is no.
Okay, good.
You'll still be, yeah. So as long as your system has USB-C out, it'll work. You just have to be mindful that it. So there's a few things to keep in mind. Is that it can be not the best, because, especially for some machines, think of like the 7840U, right? That has its own iGPU, and typically that iGPU will be kind of tied to that USB-C port. So if it's doing a DisplayPort out, it has to go through that 7840U, which means that your main desktop discrete GPU is going to be taking that frame buffer, sending it through there to get out to the USB-C part. So there can be situations where you have that type of overhead to think about, and there will be a penalty cost to that. So there is things that are like that, but NVIDIA has stopped putting USB-C directly on their video cards for whatever reason. I guess they just found, like, whatever, it doesn't really matter, because if the host system has USB-C and all of them are starting to, we can just redirect out that way. And that has largely, you're just copying the frame buffer there. There is a penalty cost, but I guess NVIDIA is like, it doesn't matter, we don't need to put it, and it's just a waste of space and silicon for us to put it on the video card itself.
It really comes down to the USB type ports you have on your computer, So like the Meta Quest 3 has an official USB-C cable that you can use. So if you wanted to tie it to a PC, you can do it that way. And it's got a USB-A end on the other end. So it's USB-C into the device and then USB-A on the other end. And I think it's 3.2 Gen 2 as maybe the connection, or maybe Gen 1 actually. And so, yeah, it's all going to come down to your PC and if you're still running, rocking USB 2.0 on those ports, then yeah, you're gonna have some just bandwidth issues, But that's really going to be what it comes down to if you have an old PC.
That's fair.
Yeah. We also had this discussion before as well, and largely I've been kind of telling people to get laptops, and we had this discussion before, is that laptops are really excellent pre-builts that are all kind of pre-designed. You are kind of cemented to whatever you have there. You can upgrade RAM, but for what it's worth, the costs of them have been at certain times you can get amazing deals on them, and when you factor in everything that you get out of it, and now the displays on these laptops are starting to get so unreal good that it's honestly a fantastic second screen to have. If you think of putting your laptop on the side and having a main screen, is that's it. Scenario is so easy now that I just love recommending. People are like, oh, should I get a pre-built PC? And I'm like, if you're already in the mind for a pre-built, think about getting a laptop, because they last a really long time. Yeah, they're preset in their ways, but you're going to be paying so little for what you're getting out of that I find them to be such a good value. And it's an easy way to just upgrade yourself and upgrade the entire set. It's like if you have an old PC, right? Like how Russ is saying, you only have USB 2, right? But you're going to just jam in this new honking GPU on there. You have a bunch of old ports and a bunch of old stuff. That is also the value of going to these newer things, that you're going to be upgrading yourself to the latest ports.
Yeah, so I was asking the guys about what parts I should buy for my computer, and they were like, this is the CPU you should buy, this is the GPU you should buy. And I looked at the price, and I came back and I said words. I was like, no thank you, that's $1,000 for that thing. And then my daughter's fiance had texted me, and he's like, hey, we're thinking about getting a computer that the both of us could use. I wanted to be able to play games on it, she wants to be able to just do computing stuff. And he was like, what should I get? And I said, I don't know, let me ask the guys, because I don't know anything about PC parts. I don't know what's good. And so I sent a message to the Discord, and Carrie was like, check out this laptop. And that laptop was the same price as the graphics card that I was looking at getting, and I was like, oh, maybe I'll just get a laptop, because right now I've got this giant computer case over there, and I could replace it's old, it runs games fine. I was playing Final Fantasy VII Remake Intergrade It's 60 frames per second, but I had to go down to 1080p, and I had to turn the textures down to low in order to maintain that 60 frames per second. And I was like, okay, if I bought this laptop, I wouldn't have to do that. And that makes, I mean, I already have a laptop. I don't need another laptop, but I don't have a gaming laptop. And I wouldn't really be getting it for it being a laptop, but just because it's the easy way to just buy a thing and plug it in and not have to deal with it. If my wife is watching this, don't worry, honey. I'm not spending any money right now.
I would also, it's one of the things that drew me to those mini PCs, because some of those do have laptop GPUs in them. So the one I use here on my desktop is the HX99G from Minis Forum, and I think it's like an $800 mini PC. But yeah, it's got a full GPU inside of it, as well as nice integrated like CPU too. And so that's what I use, because I didn't ever see a need for like a laptop kind of thing. Otherwise, yeah, it's very similar. It's just without a screen and keyboard, basically. Yeah, very similar setup with those.
Oh, I did submit the Foxbox to B-Link, so here's open. They replied and said they got it, and they'll decide later. But yeah, here's open, because that would also be an awesome thing, because then you could just upgrade the DGPU, and you'd have like a set in place of like updated ports. But even like you look at Intel's latest Meteor Lake stuff is not great for a handheld. The GPU is I got a 185H, which is like their top end Meteor Lake. And it's even more disappointing than I thought it would be in terms of like using it for gaming. But the CPU side of it is just a monster and can go up to 115 watts. And it's like, well, if you had, like you wouldn't do that on a handheld, because you'd be like, what battery life? But if you have
20 minutes,
if you have it plugged in, you don't care. And if you have that CPU that's just chewing through 100 watts, that's not that bad in the desktop world. But you're also getting desktop grade CPU performance at that point. And if you can just slot in a full 16x PCIe GPU, now you're like, whoa, I have this really tiny thing that's a high-end gaming laptop, high-end gaming PC, and I can swap out my GPU at any point in time. And if it can be neat, I think that neat in terms of the cable management. I think that. That's also another way that you can look at those things. So there's a lot of cool stuff thinking about it in general, but it's never been better.
Yeah.
Well, there you have it. Speaking of GPUs, real quick, in the NVIDIA app, for years, people on Windows have had the NVIDIA GeForce Experience, and then the GeForce, I don't remember what the other thing is, but I was
control panel.
Yeah, the control panel. And every time that I needed to do something in there, I was always like, which friggin' one am I supposed to use for this? I can't remember. And people got real mad when they decided to have us log in to download drivers.
Yeah.
All of that is going away. It's currently in beta right now. And this is posted by Sean Pelletier. He says, "Welcome to the NVIDIA app. The team has taken all the feedback we've heard regarding NVIDIA Control Panel and NVIDIA GeForce Experience and leveraged it into a single application. Check out the beta, which is available today." You guys do a lot more PC gaming than I do. I mostly just play on my Steam Deck and my consoles. Does this affect you, or do you guys have AMD GPUs?
So I have a 3080 laptop version in my XG Mobile, which is what I use with the ROG Ally, like my whole desktop setup thing, which is what I was playing Final Fantasy VII on. And so, yeah, that'll affect that. I'm looking forward to the day where I don't have to use control panel, because that thing, it's cool in the sense that every time I open it up, I'm like, oh, hey, this is what 1998 used to look like, because the interface is just so old, But other than that, yeah, I don't know. I just go in there, I install, the drivers, every week or two or whatever, whenever they're available, and that's about it.
Back in the day, I used to go into there a lot, because I would switch between the gaming drivers and I can't remember what the other drivers are called, but like the other non-gaming drivers, because Studio, thank you. Because the Studio drivers were better for streaming, essentially. So if I was like recording, like I would have my console going into my capture card, the Studio drivers would give me better results that way. But ever since I started using my Mac for content creation, I don't really use the capture card in my PC anymore, and so the PC is just a video game console for me now. So I don't really go into there anymore. What were you going to say, Carrie?
The biggest problem for me, I never used GeForce Experience. Whenever I install the drivers, it's like, you can do, standard, and I just go custom, no NVIDIA GeForce Experience app, thank you. But the GeForce control panel, NVIDIA control panel, while old, was also, I don't know how, it is the most uncharacteristic NVIDIA experience ever, because every option that you choose is like with an 8-second delay. It's like, boop. Okay, now I can choose. And it's so bad that you're like, what is NVIDIA doing? Like, does anyone realize how awful this is? Whenever I would okay, my refresh rate, I like NVIDIA Fast Sync. Let me go check Fast Sync, and it's like 50 seconds to press 3 buttons, and it's just why is this so slow? So I think from that, I haven't tried the beta yet because I'm hesitant, but at this moment, there's parts of there that I think that they could combine a bunch of stuff, because there's the NVIDIA Inspector tool, which is a hardcore tool and very fast, but not is a third-party tool outside of NVIDIA, and it does a bunch of nice things that I think should be included in the main interface app, and I think it's something that NVIDIA would generally embrace, but it goes more hardcore, right? Like, you can do per game rebar, right? So you can say on this game, turn rebar on or off, and so there's those types of things that I think should just be in the main thing, but in a very fast fashion. How they're going to display it per game and stuff, I'm fine with that, which is kind of almost a front end ish. You can kind of look at it it's okay, these are the games that you have installed, we recognize them, you click on this, you can set up the settings that you want per game. So you want rebar, that's the type of stuff that I'm talking about. Is they should, if you're going to embrace that side where it should be slick with a front end, go the full 9 yards, the NVIDIA way that it should be, the way that people anticipate NVIDIA should do it, not having those advanced settings available by default, but having a little toggle that says advanced settings, and just bloop, and then you'd see all those ones that come up. I feel like if they could just get all that, where you have your global settings that you can change rapidly and fast, and then the advanced settings per game, if they could do that, then I will be fine. But if my only option is to basically be force-fed the GeForce experience and no more control panel, it's just going to be a lose-lose situation for me. So I don't know. I haven't used it yet, but I'll just embrace the wave as it comes towards me.
It's funny because the Adrenaline one sucks too in its own ways. They both have figured out ways to just make the experience just not very fun. And for example, if you're using the AMD one and you want to show their on-screen statistics like frames per second, all that kind of stuff, getting that to turn on is 3 different settings menus you have to go into. It's the performance one, then the settings one, turn that one on, go back to the settings menu, then go into the performance in that one, and then go and turn that on, and then adjust it and stuff. And so it's always just funny that they just, I don't know, maybe they don't use them. Why is it that these UI issues are still there after all these years? It's crazy. Yeah.
The only thing that I will say that Adrenaline is better for, even though it is an absolute pain and not intuitive at all, especially with the hotkeys that you got to set up for bringing it up, is that it is less performance intensive than Hardware Info and Riva Tuner. Riva Tuner will actually be a performance penalty depending on how, especially whatever you're listing, right? However many sensors you're. It is a far more taxing process than AMD's filter, but no one uses that because it's such a pain to set up. And there's different things that those come into, but a lot of those things. I mean, for Adrenaline, where it doesn't even make any sense, they support integer scaling on the thing. So on a 7840U, you plug in an external display. It's do you want integer scaling on this display? Okay. And it's you go back and unplug the external monitor, and you're on your in-both display monitor, and integer scaling just goes away. It's why is that gone? What? Where did that come from? Why can I only do it on an external monitor? And you have to hack it in, and it's just why am I doing this? Why is this such you have to just do these incantations to just get what you want done? We
talked about this previously, right, with the Lenovo Legion Go, 1600p resolution, right? So make it 800p and then integer scale it up, and you would get better performance, and it would look great. You can't do it because it can't be done on the native display. It has to be done on an external display, and so it's so stupid.
And speaking of external displays with the Lenovo Legion Go, I for some reason it shut off behind me, but I had my Steam Deck hooked up to that screen that's right over my shoulder. For audio listeners, you know what a screen is. There was a screen over my shoulder, and I had Final Fantasy VII running in Emulation Station. Now, for some reason, it shut off in the middle of the show. But originally, I had my Lenovo Legion Go hooked up to do that. And it was like just running in the background back there because I thought it would look cool, kind of like how Russ has his TV in the background.
Yep.
And it was working fine yesterday. And this morning, I walked in here. I grabbed my Legion Go off the desk because I was playing a game on it yesterday. I plugged it in, and I don't know why, but now the external monitor is rotated portrait to match this, but it didn't do that yesterday. Yesterday, it was fine. Yesterday, it worked perfectly. Now, that screen behind me turned sideways when I plugged this in, and I was like, what in the hell is going on? And I tried everything I could. The only way I could make it not turn sideways was to extend the monitors instead of duplicate them.
Right.
And I didn't want to do that because then I had to try and force a screen to go between different screens, and I only had I just had what's on the little trackpad here. I just had the little trackpad, and that was kind of a pain, doing that with my thumb while it's on the shelf. Is this an issue that people are going to run into ever? I mean, maybe. The idea that you could be playing on this and you're like, oh, I'm going to plug it into a TV, and then suddenly it's sideways?
Yeah.
What the hell?
The moment that handheld PCs just fully adopt EDP displays instead of MIPI that is getting converted to EDP is going to be not many people. This is something that most people are just like, what is this about? And it's such an old thing at this point that for whatever reason Lenovo went with. The panel is very nice, so I can understand that they're just like, this panel is really nice, let's just use it and not worry about anything. But Asus does go the next mile with that, and one of the things that I really loved about the Asus RG Ally is that it's a EDP, VRR panel, and it's amazing. There are better quality panels, right? In terms of image quality that you get out of it, but in terms of for a gaming panel and for a handheld panel, in terms of power use and what you get out of it, absolutely the best that you can get. If other companies can just be like, hey, do you have that Asus panel? You have spares of them? We want to use it in our handheld. And I think that's just going to be a big winner by itself. But there's things like that Asus does. I'm reviewing some of the new laptops they sent me, and they go above and beyond. For instance, there is a PWM thing on OLED panels in terms of pulse width modulation, how they are blanking the screen to do brightness. Asus has gone out of their way to make a custom laptop panel that has VRR, but also for people that are affected by PWM in any sense, because some people are sensitive to this, it gives them headaches to look at screens that are flickering. They call it anti-flicker OLED, and essentially they are overriding how normal OLEDs work so that they can control brightness without actually doing PWM.
I'm just going to jump in here real quick and explain this to the people who don't use alphabet soup. All right? So for those of you that don't understand, if you've ever watched a video of somebody pointing a camera at something like the OLED Steam Deck and you've seen some kind of flickering, and the person who's making the video has usually said, I can't see that in real life, it's just because of the camera. That's what Carrie is talking about.
Exactly right.
And apparently there's a thing that can make it not do that flickering, because apparently some people are superheroes and can see that, or at least it causes them fatigue.
Yeah. The mutant power.
Yeah. So but, I mean,
the worst X-Men.
Yeah, right?
I can't look at TV screens.
Yeah, they give me headaches. But that's the type of thing that Asus quietly deserves recognition for this. They're doing extra work in the background. They did it for the Asus RG Ally, and they're one of the only PC gaming handheld. They are the only PC gaming handheld that has this type of screen where they went the extra mile to just make it better. And you wouldn't have this type of issue that you're happening when you're plugging in an external screen, because if you were duplicating the screen, it would be the same landscape native that it would go to the other one. It would just be at that resolution. Whereas you're duplicating your Lenovo Legion, and its active resolution is native portrait. So you just get this fog on your display because that's how it's getting it. And he's just like, well, that doesn't make any sense. And again, this is like something that I'm in the background screaming, right? Like, get rid of native portrait displays. And I just hope that as the industry goes on that we slowly get rid of this. And for the Steam Deck, it doesn't matter as much because they handle all that stuff through GameScope.
Right.
GameScope does a bunch of heavy lifting. It's like external displays, don't worry about whatever the hell our internal is. We're just going to get the edited information from whatever the panel that's coming in, and we're going to treat that as its own separate thing, which is a very nice thing that Valve does and is how things should be done, right? Like, it should be handling these things in their own use case. Whatever EDIT information you get from that external panel, we should be focusing on that as opposed to trying to mimic what you have on your main screen. I get why Windows would do that, but Windows, as a Windows person, they're just like, well, what happens if someone has like a native portrait display? And they're like, why would that ever happen? Yeah, you're right. It's never going to happen. Like, just duplicate these screens. Yeah, so you can see through the veil there.
You know,
I just don't understand why it worked yesterday and today it doesn't work. What were you saying, Russ?
I was going to say I had a meeting with Asus and they were telling me about their screens, and I think it had to do with the OLED. Like they hit me with like 1,000 things, and so I can't remember all of it, but I remember them talking about screen refresh rates and how people will have issues with screen tearing and stuff like that. And so one of the things they do on, it was either a monitor or one of the laptops, is they double it, and so that instead of the panel like refreshing across the side, they have it also refreshing on the other side as well. So it costs them twice as much to set this up basically, but it minimizes all of that refresh rate and all the flickering and all that kind of stuff specifically for that one device. Just like it's a cost that they're taking on basically. Yeah. We want a better experience, and yes, our device might be a little bit more expensive than the other competitor model or whatever, but those are the things they're thinking about, is like, we want to make sure the experience is better. And so exactly, I think we see that with the ROG Ally, and I appreciate that they've done that. As far as, Bill, why it probably you woke up and why it wasn't working like that, my guess is, and Carrie and I see this all the time, is that we get these drivers on the device, and those are supplied by the OEM, or they're supplied by NVIDIA, or not NVIDIA, but AMD or whatever. And then Windows says, hey, we've got an update for you, and it's got a driver attached to it, and we're going to update it for you because it's got a higher number or something. And all of a sudden you wake up and your computer's been refreshed, and all of a sudden you can't adjust screen brightness on a handheld, for example. That happens all the time. You got to uninstall that old driver and then find the proprietary one, or get the company to send you one so that you can finish your testing. So that happens all the time.
That's what this is a Windows issue, and if I installed Bassite on my Legion Go, I'd be fine. Is that what you're saying?
That's the route I would go. Like, hearing your story, I'd be like, okay, let's check the drivers. I bet you it's a Windows update.
Yeah. It happens with when I use the hacked Cypher has this easy tool to hack in integer scaling on AMD side for the internal display. I always use it, but every time there's an update to the AMD Radeon drivers, that gets reset. So I'm just like, why is this all blurry all of a sudden? Like, oh crap, I gotta hack it in again. And so it's just like this constant battle of like re-hacking it in, because it's not a supported feature by default. So it's not carrying that stuff over. It's literally wiping out the setting. Yeah, so it's annoying.
Next up, real quick, we did have like the Nintendo Direct in here, but do you guys care about the Nintendo Direct? Because my God, I thought that was boring as hell.
I didn't catch it.
I didn't catch it either.
There was nothing interesting for me. But if you guys didn't watch it, then obviously nothing to talk about there. I guess one last thing is there's rumors that Sony's going to be releasing a PS5 Pro. And I looked, and the PS4 Pro came out about 3 years after the PS4. We're starting the fourth year of the PS5, although it doesn't really feel like it because there's all those cross-gen games that we had, and the fact that nobody could get their hands on a PS5 or a Series X. It feels like this gen just started, in my opinion. Do you guys think it's too soon for a Pro, especially when so few people... I say so few people. They've sold probably 50 million PS5s at this point. Do you people haven't had them for long enough, or do you think it's too soon? Carrie, what do you think?
So, I mean, I agree with the playbook that they're running, because the playbook worked well for them on the PS4. And you can almost it's like timed, like how Nintendo's playbook is, right? They're going to release the 3DS, then they're going to make the 3DS XL, they're going to make the 3DS Mini, then they're going to make the new one. And it's like all these like years to constantly have it be like in the sphere of people where they are. The part for me that I am curious about is if they are just going to replicate what they did in the previous years, which was needed insofar as just doing a GPU upgrade. And I'm hesitant to say that this is a something that's needed, only because the CPU side, especially with the kneecapped caches that they have on their Zen 2 cores, as well as the very low clock frequency. 3.5 gigahertz on Zen 2 is nothing. Like it's like the best efficiency curve for it, but it can clock way higher than that. So are we going to just be still in Zen 2 world for the CPU side and only just have a beefier GPU side? And is that something that is anything that is going to be really necessary for anyone to really care about? And that's the part that I think about. But then again, PS Portals are selling out, so what do I know? People are just gonna buy this thing because it has a bigger GPU, and it's part of the playbook that needs to happen. There's other parts there that I want to talk about, insofar as there's things that are escaped out of, I don't know, because I can't see it, and it has to do with contractual parts of it. Like for AMD side, right? If AMD says, hey, we built you this PS5 GPU, APU, so you have your Zen 5 core, you have your GPUs, and we built this is your semi-custom part. We made the N6 version of it, which is a redesign. There's a cost to that Sony owns. But would them going to a newer GPU or a newer CPU be a whole new cost, versus just getting more GPU is just like, well, you're just getting more of the same that you have, so we're not really going to charge you all that much. We'll just kind of charge you for what you already paid and just do this redesign. You know what I mean? It's like, I don't know the costs of going to like Zen 5, to say if the PS5 Pro went to Zen 5, that would be a huge increase, because now you're going to be able to hit 120 FPS way more often than you are in those Zen 2 cores. So that's where things get a lot more interesting for me from a PS5 Pro side, is the CPU side more than the GPU. So yeah, that's where I think I find things more interesting, but I don't know yet.
If one came out this year, at the end of the year, Russ, would you buy it?
Absolutely not. Like I cannot see what I need to upgrade with my PS5. Like I turn it on and it's awesome, and so it's like I'm just not at that threshold where I'm like, oh, I'm ready for an upgrade. Like I just can't fathom like getting any better than I already have, and so that to me is an indication that I'm not ready for it. The only thing that kind of makes me think about it a little bit is that I don't have a disk drive on my original PS5. I've got the digital one because it was the only one I could get at the time. And actually that was a viewer who reached out to me. He's like, hey, I've got 2 PS5s. I'll sell you one at cost. And this was back when I was a very small channel. I was like, this is the coolest Christmas ever, And so I ended up getting one, I think in 2021, which was amazing. Anyway, so I have been thinking, because just yesterday I went to Best Buy and I saw a lot of PS5 disc games on sale, and I was reaching for them. I'm like, wait, I can't actually play these, And so that's the one thing where I'm a little bit tempted about it. But that aside, I bought the Xbox Series X over Christmas this past year because it was cheap. It was $299 or whatever the heck it was. So I bought one and I was like, finally, I can play my Xbox One discs. I can get into Xbox Series discs, which can be cheap from time to time. But yesterday I bought Jedi Survivor. It was $35, about the same as you can get on the Steam sale. And I was like, oh, this will be great. I can play on the Xbox, and I've heard that performance is better on console than it is on PC. And so I bought this thing, I put the disc in, and it was 130 gig download, and it was going to take 3.5 hours.
I saw that
and so
too, yeah.
the moment I wanted to play it, I'm like, it's ready, and just another aside is that yesterday was my birthday, and I was like, this is perfect. I can have a birthday gaming sesh. Oh, thank you. Anyway, so I'm playing, I'm like, this will be perfect. And it's 3.5 hours. I'm like, okay, well, we're doing something else for my birthday now. And so that was kind of crazy, and so part of me is like, yes, PS5 Pro, because then I can get a disc with it, disc drive and all that stuff, and can get, it's about that time where you're starting to see disc games go on discount, which means it's going to be worth more. It's just better bang for your buck at that point. But I'm not going to do 130 gig downloads every time. I don't want to do that. And so, I don't know, prospect's not there for me.
The just to speak on that really quick, I know we were talking about PS5 Pro, but that is something that Xbox really has to figure out, because that's something that is probably pre-baked since the Xbox One came out, was that the disc was just supposed to be a license and not so much a where you're going to be reading from, and you'll be downloading stuff. While that sucks, and I totally agree with you, I'm not going to defend that at all, because it's a really sucky thing. You should just be downloading from the disc and needing whatever new you needed from the network, or something needs to be going at the same time. Doing it that way really sucks. The one nice thing that is a kind of a weird plus is for Xbox 360 games, if they're scratched to hell, and people are like, oh, it's kind of busted, it doesn't work. Because you don't actually need the data on the disc, it just needs to license the disc. If you put it in and it recognizes the disc, it'll start downloading the game, and you're running off the download instead of whatever data is on the disc. So you can get super cheap 360 games that are scratched to hell, but it'll read just fine as whatever the hell it was. Even that works for Xbox One games. You're like, it's $1 because it's all scratched up to hell. Like, as long as it reads as Panzer Dragoon, it's gonna download and I'll be able to play it. So that's a one weird way to look at as a plus of it downloading stuff instead of needing the data on the disc. But for newer games, when it's 130 gigabytes, it's untenable. It's just like, it sucks. That is so bad. That is such a bad experience.
Yeah, but the thing that worries me is not like, I bet, for the next 5-10 years, it'll be fine. You can throw in your Xbox disc, you can download and stuff. But what about 30 years from now, right? Like the ability, like I cannot probably play Jedi Survivor on my Xbox 30 years from now, because there's going to be something preventing, like the server's offline or Microsoft's gone a different direction or all those kind of things. I no longer can play that game on a disc. And so that's kind of a bummer in that long kind of reaching idea that kind of always scares me off from buying a digital library in the first place.
Oh, yeah.
The Nintendo thing has really scared that off too. But I don't know. Like there's no win-win there. Emulation, I guess.
I think that's where like PC has always been. The reason in like 2010 when I moved over to PC in general was this idea of, in 20, 30 years, how am I going to be able to play these games? And PC was the only way of like, for sure, I know I'll be able to do something on PC side that I'll be able to get this working. So that's why I went in 2010. I went hardcore PC. But yeah, when you look at those from the only thing I could say is that Microsoft is very IBM like, in that one of the reasons that a lot of companies do them is that they're one of the few companies that do legacy, right? They're not like Google, where Google's like, here's Google Talk, which used to be Google Hangout, which used to be Google Speak, which used to be, it's just like, it's like 4 derivatives down that is like the same thing but somehow different. And Microsoft's thing was like, if you start from Windows 3.1 and upgrade to Windows 95 and upgrade to Windows 98 and upgrade to, you can upgrade it every time and it will retain those settings from back then. So if you make your desktop whatever and any color, it'll like retain that as much as it possibly can until it starts, Windows 8 really destroys everything. But in terms of theme, right, it will copy over that theme, and that's like 20 years of legacy that it's trying to hold on to make sure that whatever you're upgrading to, it's the same experience that you had back then. And for what it's worth, I mean, they have done a bunch as much as they can. Having said that, Xbox Live 1 no longer exists, which we talked about in this podcast, where Dammit Jeff used the open source version, the third-party Xbox Live. So yeah, who knows? Who knows if but everything's on Azure now, and Azure's their enterprise thing. So they've been dogfooding everything on Azure. So all their CDN is Azure. Everything is fed from Azure. So it's a Microsoft-owned thing instead of using third parties. Where PS5 and Steam, they both use Akamai to deliver their stuff. So those are the CDNs that they're using. They're using third-party stuff, and Microsoft's using themselves. So I would say that out of all of them, like Microsoft has the legacy bones versus a lot of the newer companies. Having said that, Xbox Live happened, so who knows?
Well, yeah, I'm looking, as you're talking about that, I'm looking at your background and all those things. Like you got your your PS1 back there or whatever. You can put your PS1 discs in that PS1 and play those games, but is that going to happen with the PS5 Pro? I don't know.
I think so. DF has done stuff like that, right? Like PS5. Well, if the PS5 Pro doesn't have a disc drive, right, or if they're trying to they sell it and you have to buy the add-on drive only,
right?
That is going to be like a thing. Like, how many people are really going to buy the add-on drive?
That's their way of phasing out. Yeah.
Yeah, and especially how messed up the disk drive is, because when you buy that disk drive and tag it to your system, it will only ever work on that system. Ridiculous. Like it's now hard coded to your system.
Oh wow!
So
oh my gosh.
Yeah, so there's like all of these things of like, do I even want to buy it? I can't resell it if I don't like it anymore because it's tied to my system and functionally worthless to anyone else. So it becomes this weird thing where you can see them like going in a new direction. We talked about PSVR2 going on PC today, right? And there is a whole thing of like that poem, right? It's like, first they came for the socialists, but I wasn't a socialist, so I said nothing. And like, it's like, right. Gas games are day and date, PC day one, right? Now PSVR2 games are going to be, it's like, well, I didn't play gas games, so I didn't say anything. And I didn't play PSVR2 games, so I didn't say anything. And then they came for my single player games, but there was no one left to speak. And it's like, you can kind of see them like going to this digital only thing, going to PC day and date. And you can see all of these things happening in the background because you can see all of the almost like a tax, right? There's a tax taxes can be to penalize things, but taxes can also be used to govern how people do things. So there are benefits to being married and things like that. So like you get tax breaks for being married, so they incentivize getting married, and like there's things that you can do. So it's like you buy a PS5 Pro, it's digital only. If you want the disc drive version, just buy that. But it can only work with that system ever, and you can't resell it, and has all these other baggage things that come with it. Also, it's going to be more expensive, and it's like, oh, I don't know if I want all of that. And people are just doing digital only, and then the PS6 comes out, and it's like, well, you've been buying every PS5 game digitally, so you're good now. Getting back to what you said, just to wrap it up, I know I go on a tangent.
Great tangent.
But Digital Foundry has done their tests where they put in the disc and it just reads and runs off of the disc outside of being connected to the internet. So PlayStation does do that, and Xbox doesn't run that way at all. So that is a benefit for PlayStation disc version, is that it does play off the version. And that's how Digital Foundry actually tests older versions of games, is they offline the system, put in the disc version, and then capture whatever game performance out of it, and then get the latest version online. If the system's online, it'll start automatically downloading whatever version is, like 1. Whatever.
Right.
But that's how Digital Foundry tests older versions, to be able to give you a comparison of how much improvement has happened to the newer one, whereas that's not functionally possible on Xbox.
Yeah, that was the idea I had after the fact when I made that tweet, and I was like 130 gig downloads. Like, I should have unplugged my Xbox from the internet, then put the disc in and see what happens. And would I have been able to play an older version? Because that would have been fine. Like, I don't need all the latest and greatest. I just wanted to test it out for a few minutes. It's my birthday. I want to do what I want. But anyway.
That's such a weird way to play the game off the disc, right? But I think that in reality that you'd still be downloading it from the disc to your hard disk, so there'd still be a wait. Right. And also, I don't think it would actually play if you were online. It's worth testing, but there is like a weird thing that's going on there that Microsoft really needs to. I don't know what the hell they're going to do, but they've been going digital at a faster rate and making it prohibitive to buy discs as it is. So that's where Xbox is.
Yeah. I love that everybody always complains about the consoles losing physical. And I'm not saying that people shouldn't complain about this, because I want people to have access to physical media. But I love that people are always complaining about that. But on PC, nobody cares. Like, you don't go out to the store and buy physical games anymore and install. I mean, who has a disc drive on their computer these days? Carrie's going to raise his hand.
Oh, I don't. No, I don't. I don't.
But the thing is like, people seem like they look at Steam and they say, well, I got it on Steam, I own it. Until you don't. And right now, Valve is doing the right thing. But if Gabe Newell decides that he wants to retire, and maybe we're just going to open it up, make it a publicly traded company, and then suddenly things change. And it's I just, the way I'm looking at this is, and somebody even put in a comment where it's okay when these guys do something, but it's not okay when these guys do something. And I think that I'm just as guilty of this as everybody else is. In fact, we're going to wrap up real soon, but this came in from the Gore Force as a question for us. They said, or a comment. They said, I wish people kept the same energy across all games because microtransactions and their effect on games, Helldivers 2 is given a free pass because the game itself is good. Diablo, because people are burned out and have nothing good to say, yes, one is more expensive, but it still uses the same tactics. It's like everybody piles on Blizzard for their ridiculous $65 horse skin in that game. But Helldivers 2 is like, there's battle passes, there's microtransactions, and everybody's like, the game is so great. And this feels like the same exact thing, the same energy as physical media. We need to keep physical media, but Steam is fine. And it's just such a weird dichotomy there that I just find super interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, it's true, because 30 years from now, will I be able to play my Steam games, too? Like, it's the same question, you know, but hopefully. For some reason I have the expectation if I buy a disc, then I should be able to play it or whatever, you know, but I don't know, even Switch, like, when we were at Best Buy yesterday, Metal Gear Solid Collection was like half off. It was like $30, $25 or something like that, and I was like, that's a good price for all three of those games. And then you look at the back and it's like, oh, you've got 32 gigs of download in order to play these games. Right. And I'm like, no, I didn't even buy it. I was like, the whole reason why I'm building a Switch cartridge collection is so that I'll have an offline system that I can just use anytime 30 years from now.
Yeah, Switch is the last system that I still buy Xbox Series games just because Game Pass is like a price killer on it. Like if a game ever comes on Game Pass, you just go to GameStop and the used version of it is like $3 or like $7, and I'm like, oh, all right, I'll buy these games. But typically, like I just bought like WarioWare's latest the latest WarioWare game for $30, and Nintendo games are traditionally never go on a big discount, so it was like $30. So I was like, that's the buy price. So I buy like first party Nintendo games for like $30. But Switch is the last series I'm buying. Number one, I enjoy having it on the cartridge. I just feel like I don't really like collecting disc-based games just because they feel not console-like, right? It's felt very PC-like. But yeah, for me, I don't care if it's digital, because as long as we can download the game somewhere and someone has a repository somewhere, because it's the scene that keeps games alive. It's not these companies that keep games alive. So like, you know, we all have our own storage of different stuff that we have. Like when we're playing ROMs on these things, we have those ROMs. We didn't need the physical version. And, you know, people can complain and talk about whatever they want about it, but the scene has done an amazing job of keeping preservation alive, and it's largely going to be on all of us to make sure that all of that's available and making sure that, you know, as time goes on, we can't rely on these companies because these companies have shown time and time again that they're unreliable.
Yeah. And that's why emulation always wins. Which brings us right back to the beginning of the show. So I think that's a good chance for us to end it. Good gravy. These episodes keep getting longer. Thank you guys for hanging out with us. We're almost at 2 hours right now. Russ, what videos you got coming out, man?
So Onion OS just released a new version yesterday. Nice. Birthday present for me, I guess. But so I bought one of the new Miu Minis, like the not non-plus, like the older ones. They're now like in stock. Like you can just go on the Miu website and buy these.
The smaller ones?
The smaller ones, yeah, they're like no longer hard to find. And the new Onion OS updates, because this is a different screen resolution. I can't remember what it is, but it's not 480p, it's like 5 something instead. Like they just found some panel that worked, basically. Anyway, so Onion OS is now like updated their software to accommodate that. And so I'm going to make a video about that next, is like how to upgrade, the fact that this is now freely available, not freely available, you know what I mean, it's available to buy, and then just what new features and stuff are in that new Onion OS. So
nice.
Very cool. Carrie, what do you got holding in your hand there? Is that a video that you're working on?
It will be. It's going to be a few weeks out still because it's not actually on sale in any form. But I just finished up my GP2 WinMax 2 8840U video. That took a long time for me to complete because there was a sensational amount of benchmarking and to demonstrate how AMD plays fast and loose with TDP. This is still a thing that a lot of people really have a hard time conceptualizing, grasping their head around, so I needed to visualize it as best as I could and show off that if I set 7840U GPU max and 8840U GPU max 2 to 10 watts, and I set the screen brightness the same, and I turn off the backlight, and I have all the same settings, same Windows version, that my 8840U is technically using more total system power. And this is a thing that I talked about years ago when I said the Steam Deck TDP is wrong, and a lot of people were having a hard time understanding and said I was just like looking at it wrong. But it's just the same thing that I said years ago is happening again. It's the same thing, and why we have to start benchmarking these things in a different way. And overall, I was really happy with the video, and I find it to be kind of defeating because my video got posted in a bunch of different places. Like I made it to Guru 3D posted about it, and I saw it on Hard Forum. So Hard Forums is also a really hardcore forum, and I don't find anyone really commenting on it because like they're not finding anything wrong with me, and they're not really like grasping what's going on. So there's like no one really having any interaction with it. So it's just like, that sucks. You know, like I would hope people, because usually when I do something technical, people are like, oh, you should have done this or that. But I did so much, and I didn't leave a lot of stones unturned, that it's just like no one's saying anything. They're just like, it's like, you know, it's a weird thing. I like the video. I think it's overall really done. This video, I have some other stuff. I have a little Nuck that I'm doing from Geekum. But this is a Ugreen. Ugreen is a company you might have heard of. They've done batteries and stuff. So now they're exploring NASs and stuff.
That's awesome.
So they sent me their 4-bay one. This is running their Intel Atom, basically, CPU. But this NAS has an HDMI port out on it. So effectively, it's just a computer with bays, right? Normally you get a NAS and it doesn't have a display out. You connect it to network only, and you use another software to connect to it. You can still do that on this. It has a web dashboard. But effectively, what this means is that it's running Ugreen's Linux OS with stuff on top of it. But if I want to, I can install TrueNAS on it. I can install Windows on it. And I can do whatever the hell I please with it because it's just a computer with 4 SATA ports on it and whatever else, right? So I love this a lot, so I want to explore this a bunch. I'm hopeful that I want to try to see if I can get the 8-bay version of this as well. The 8-bay has Intel's 1225U, which is like, this is like the perfect opportunity because people have always wanted like cheap, low power, and good, and usually had to pick 2 of the 3, and we're finally getting to the point where we get all 3 of them. And this is I've seen a lot of different companies. AUStar, which is some nobody brand, has been reusing 5800 Ryzen 5800U parts. So you have a nice 8-core chip that's only like 25-30 watt, but very performant. It's just an exciting time. So that's where I'm ending off. Sorry for taking too much time again, but yeah, that's where I am.
Listen, Carrie, if you took too much time, I wouldn't ask you to be on the show. You take as much time as Carrie needs to take. That's how it works.
Thank you.
I will say that I have that same NAS on the way to my house, and I'm working on a video where I'm going to try and get it to work with the Steam Deck, so I could play the games over network attached storage instead of depending on the terabyte. What's the SSD that's in the Steam Deck? We'll see if it works. If it doesn't work, then it was a fun experiment anyway. But I love, and they're not sponsoring this video, although they have sponsored my videos in the past. I love Ugreen. I use their stuff every single day. I'll leave a couple of links down below to other videos that I've talked about their stuff on before. But they make really good stuff that's useful, that a lot of people, and there's a reason why all of us have stuff of theirs, because it's good stuff. But anyway, that's going to do it for this episode of the NerdNest podcast, our longest episode yet. We're at 2 hours now, 1 hour and 58 minutes, and I don't know how that happened with only 3 of us, but so far, nobody's complained. If you guys have complaints, leave them in the comment section down below. Make sure you head over to youtube.com/retrogamecore and youtube.com/thefox and subscribe to their channels, as well as youtube.com/nerdnet.